Shadow Minister Andrew Rosindell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for advanced sight of her statement. His Majesty's opposition welcome the passing of the US drafted resolution at the United Nations Security Council yesterday. The US has shown consistent leadership on the Middle East, and for that we are grateful. Hamas must now release the final 3 deceased hostages. We keep their loved ones and their families of all deceased hostages in the forefront of our thoughts. We cannot even begin to imagine what trauma they have endured. Madam Deputy Speaker, key to yesterday's resolution was a mandate for the International Stabilisation Force. But can the Foreign Secretary set out exactly what Britain's contribution will be to that force? The government speaks about the need for the force to be deployed quickly to avoid potential power vacuum being filled by Hamas. So, what is Britain's contribution? Are we looking at technical assistance, the sharing of expertise or intelligence, funding, action on the ground, or all of the above? It is important that the Foreign Secretary is clear and precise about these details. Can she also update the House on which countries are expected to participate and what their contributions will be? Of course, the removal of Hamas from power and its full disarmament are vital if we are to turn this ceasefire into a sustainable end to the conflict and the cycles of violence. Following yesterday's vote, what practical contribution is the UK going to make to these efforts? She will be aware that there are several points in the US President's plan specifically on this. So where does the UK dock into those initiatives? And has the Foreign Secretary identified which areas the UK will focus on as a contribution to the broader transitional day after plan? Can she at least confirm that a fundamental curriculum and educational overhaul in Gaza and indeed the West Bank will be a key focus? We have seen huge strides elsewhere in the Middle East in this domain. This must now be a moment of reckoning for the curriculums in the OPTs. It is vital that we are to build a sustainable peace. Regarding the immediate humanitarian crisis in Gaza, what practical actions is the Foreign Secretary undertaking with the government of Israel to achieve the surge in aid for innocent civilians that we all want to see? Specifically, which crossings does she believe will need attention? What is the quantum of designated British aid that is not getting over the border into Gaza? And have specific proposals and solutions been conveyed by the British side to the Israeli government counterparts on how to address the bottlenecks that we all want to see resolved? Now, turning to the situation in Sudan, Madam Deputy Speaker, in Al Fasher and elsewhere, we continue to witness atrocities, suffering and human misery beyond words, all in plain sight of a watching world. Accountability must be administered. In the immediate term, the UK should be trying to spearhead a step change in the level of pressure on the warring parties to agree a comprehensive ceasefire. As my right honourable friend, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, has argued, we need heavy new sanctions on key operators and action to deter entities, individuals and businesses whose support continues to sustain the conflict. Will this be forthcoming, and what discussions is the Foreign Secretary having with counterparts in the US, the EU, the Sudan Quad and others on this? And so can the Foreign Secretary also update the House on the government's response to the United States' efforts to bring about a humanitarian ceasefire and what role Britain is playing in that. On the dire humanitarian conditions, it was confirmed at the dispatch box earlier this month that the shifting of frontiers in the conflict is affecting aid delivery. How has the situation evolved in the last 2 weeks, and what levers can be pulled to try and smash through obstacles to aid delivery? And finally, in relation to day after planning, can the Foreign Secretary update the House on efforts to build up the capacity and capabilities of organic civilian political groups to give Sudan the best chance of moving to stable civilian government after a ceasefire? Madam Deputy Speaker, we have seen what the US has achieved through the UN Security Council on Gaza this week. I hope similar initiatives will be possible with regard to Sudan. As penholder, the UK government has a special responsibility. So finally, can the Foreign Secretary confirm her next steps on the UNSC as the conflict moves from bad to worst? We must shift gear.
Secretary.
Can I thank the opposition front bench for their response on both the issues around Gaza and Sudan, to take the points that he raised in turn. In terms of the International Stabilisation Force, we do not expect the UK to contribute troops to the International Stabilisation Force, but we are already providing military and civilian deployment into the Civil and Military Coordinating Committee that is led by the US and is drawing up practical arrangements for implementing the 20-point plan. In terms of the nature of the contribution that we expect the role we expect to continue to play, we already provide some training for Palestinian police, for example, and I have met US military forces who are involved in that training, and I've met them in Jordan. Other countries are also offering to provide that training for Palestinian police, which is also going to be critical to maintaining security and safety. We have also offered expertise around decommissioning, because it is an area where, through the Northern Ireland experience, we also have experience and expertise, and particularly most immediately around demining capabilities, both in terms of funding and in terms of expertise in that area as well. He also raised the issues around curriculum reform. I completely agree with him. This needs to take place. This is a crucial part of the Palestinian Authority reforms, and I have discussed this directly with President Abbas, and the importance of maintaining the commitments that the Palestinian Authority has made to curriculum reform needs to be essential, both in terms of the occupied territories and also in Gaza, and both in terms of the West Bank, and in terms of Gaza as well. In terms of the practical issues around the opening of crossings, we want to see all of the crossings opened. We want to see restrictions lifted. The coordinating committee, which has the UK presence, is working directly with the Israeli government to seek to improve access and both the monitoring and also improve the arrangements in order to get more aid through. But I do continue to urge swifter action to be able to get that desperately needed aid in place. In terms of the Sudan issue, I welcome his support for sanctions. I have had personal direct discussions with all the members of the Quad, including most recently with the Secretary of State, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, last week, and I know how strongly he also feels about the terrible, horrendous atrocities that are taking place in Sudan now, and we will continue to offer our support to that process. In terms of aid delivery, based on what the UN and Tom Fletcher have been saying, it looks as though not only the routes, some of the routes in are currently completely inadequate, so there is both security that is needed to be provided, but also infrastructure in order to get the desperately needed scale of aid in. We will need to look at air routes in as well as the truck routes in. And then he is right as well to point note the need for the organic support for Sudanese organisations, civilian organisations. It is crucial ultimately that we have a transition to a civilian administration in Sudan, an end to the horrendous fighting that we have seen, the horrendous abuse, the horrendous sexual violence we have seen, with reports on all sides of that kinds of those sorts of atrocities taking place. And I would, I think, finally say the US leadership has been incredibly important in achieving the ceasefire agreement and the peace process so far in Gaza, but it has also depended on the international community coming in alongside the US and working together to deliver the progress so far. We need that same international commitment for Sudan, and we need the whole international community to pull together to deliver progress in the same way.